Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. V, where we are intentional about connecting you with other entrepreneurs that have overcome and want to provide value to our audience. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches nurses to work from their computers anywhere around the world, make money, and own in their own time. So we have several special guests this morning. I am super excited because these are the nurse bosses. Okay, they are amazing, amazing. So I'm going to start to my right, and Onisa. So if you could go ahead, introduce yourself, and tell us about your business and all of that.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. Good morning. My name is Onisa Mitchell Fisher, nurse practitioner. I'm the owner and CEO of Healing Heart CPR, as well as a new telehealth platform that's being launched next month. It's called Onyx Oasis Services. And my platform is helping all those that's underinsured and uninsured. So it'll be a cash-based practice. And I take care of the mental, the physical, the spiritual, the whole person in my practice.
Sweet. Super excited. Super excited. Dr. Jonille.
Hi, I'm Joniel Conley, and I've been a registered nurse for a long time. And I was an operating room nurse, and I was bullied awful in the operating room, bullied in my personal and professional life. And I did my doctoral dissertation on nursing, bullying and nursing, and have created a program to help nurses and others resist and recover from bullying. It's one thing to be able to resist it, but how do we recover? And I think for us in nursing these last few years, even before, we struggled with bullying in toxic workplaces. So I'm opening the School of Bullyology in the fall. So those who are interested in enrolling, there'll be an undergraduate, graduate, and independent study programs that you can work with me to resist and recovering bullying in the workplace.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So Tammy, go ahead. Tell us who you are and what do you provide for your clients?
Yes, ma'am. So my name is Tamanika Marshall, Tammy for short. I'm your favorite family nurse practitioner, and I own Lumen Diagnostic Services and its subsidiaries, La Lure Health and Wellness and La Lure Academy. And so what we do, we empower you to become an active participant in your healthcare. We do a wide variety of things. I'm also a brain coach with Dr. Amen. And so I felt like psychology is one of the few things that we treat based on what you're feeling and not look at the offending factor, which is your brain. And it could be, when you come into me and you're telling me, oh, I feel like my heart has some palpitations or whatever, I'm going to run like an EKG. I'm going to do so many things to make sure that your heart is functioning well. Why is it with mental health, when I'm telling you that I'm anxious, we're not looking at the offending factor, which is your brain? And there could be very real brain issues that are going on, whether it's sleep deprivation from sleep apnea, lack of oxygen flow, heavy metal poisoning and toxicity in the brain. So I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Phyllis, my friend. So go ahead and tell us who you are and tell us about your business.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here as well. I'm Phyllis Carter Riles, RN, a nurse of over 32 years who's been blessed with an amazing career. And I won't say most recently, but my biggest thing and is also the linchpin for my business. And that is my certification, my board certification in infection control, prevention and control. And so I am the owner of Phyllis C. Riles, LLC, under which my infection control concepts collaboration, Phyllis infection control concepts for churches are just a couple of my programs. Yes.
Cool.
And I'd like to pull it all together with my kingdom assignment, because that too, while it's not a part of my LLC, it's a part of my assignment from the kingdom. And so I am the kingdom nurse, where I bridge the gap between healthcare and kingdom care. I'm excited to be here.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And you're the author of Clean Paws, which my grandsons love. So, we've gotten the little thing. So my grandson, I was like, you need to wash your hands. He was like, well, I need my red thing so that he can tie. I was like, good. So we're super excited about that. So now we want to talk about mental health and nursing. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this, one of the reasons is because of the young lady. Well, it's just a thing that we rarely talk about a lot of times in nursing. I used to work in the emergency department, and we would go from coding a patient to taking care of another patient that was not so sick. And that transition is a hard transition, right? And we don't talk about that. And then, they say, well, you're just supposed to debrief. When the reality is that you never have time to debrief about anything, right? You have got to go on to that next patient.
Yeah.
And so there was a young lady who was in LA. She was from Texas. She was a nurse, and the accounts, and I don't know whether they're true or not, but they say that she abandoned her patients. She abandoned her patients. She left. She got in her car. They say she was arguing with her. The account says she was arguing with her boyfriend. She had had 13 previous accidents, and initially they thought that she was intoxicated, and everything about the way that if you have a chance, just go back and look at that video. Everything about that video said she wasn't intoxicated, because it was like a straight, like she was going. Looked like to be at least 100 miles an hour. She went through a red light. She killed 6 people. She did not kill herself. And so the deal is that we have to understand, we want to really, really have an understanding or talk about mental health in nursing. So, I'm going to start with Anissa. Just give us what you think, some of the catalysts and some of the issues are, and just kind of some of the ways in which we can solve these problems, and some incidences where you've encountered problems with your own mental health, or you've seen people around you.
And one thing about it is that you're right, we don't get a chance to we don't. So we internalize a lot of things, and we try to separate home from work, and you bring it home, and it's like a domino effect. It can affect everything that you touch, really. So for me, what I try to do is, on my way home, try to debrief myself, so to speak. And a lot of times I would sit out in the front of the house and just sit there for like 30 minutes to an hour and just try to switch gears, so to speak, so that I try not to bring it into my home. I think I've done pretty good. My sons hadn't said anything about me coming in here being crazy, but there are just certain things that stick out in your brain, especially when you've had a traumatic day, like you said with the ER, and you be coding people. But what happens when you code that person and they don't survive? You can't necessarily catch that. And if you are a nurse at heart, seriously a nurse at heart, not just there for the dollar signs, it affects you. It changes you, because now you're blaming yourself, because you're trying to figure out what could I have done different. And when it's not nothing you could have done, because when God say come home, you come home to care who tries to save your life. But so for me, my exercise is what helps me. That's what helps me, because that gives me a little clarity that allows me to get that negative juju out of my system. But it also provides me a sense of well-being and a sense of accomplishment to keep my life positive and balanced. And I've seen nurses that are walking around, bags up under their eyes, exhausted, because they do not know how to detach and work through those feelings, especially when they lose a patient. And so it could traumatize you for the rest of your life if you're not careful and don't do something to try to cope with how you feel. And you can't necessarily talk to your family because it's a violation of HIPAA, depending on what you say. But you have to have an outlet, and my outlet for me is exercise.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, I want everyone to chime in whenever you are. Again, this is going to be sort of like a clubhouse type of thing. Just chime in and tell us your feelings on, how that affects you. Because as I recall, we never talked about that in nursing school. Never talked about that. And so,
because our parents didn't, our parents didn't say, oh, I just feel down, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. Our parents didn't teach us how to do that. They just keep going, because we got to be strong. We have to be strong.
That's
And
right.
that was a quality that was instilled into us. And so that's why you have a lot of us in burnout now, because we've had to be strong
Mm-hmm.
for so long, and nobody ever checks on us.
That's right.
Nobody checks on us
That's
because
right.
Onissa's gonna be all right. She's strong.
Yeah.
She can handle it. And just because you don't see it, because you see this big smile, don't mean that I'm not dying inside.
When I was thinking about COVID and how COVID has changed the game, because when you're in a disaster, and I was appalled. I'm just going to tell you, I was appalled when I heard this. So when you are in a disaster, there's black, and then there's red, and then there's other colors, right? Your black is you're almost dying. You're almost dying.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, they don't get any care.
Right.
And your brain I can't imagine not giving someone care, because what that does is that causes more injury. But I'm sure that happened during COVID a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, talking about, just talk through that. Just give us your thoughts on that.
So being married to a military man, right, and having his experiences help guide the way that I practice my business. And one of the things that I'm noticing is the lack of preparation of us. In school, this is what happens. People die. However, we're not taught appropriately in school on how to deal with that or even process our emotions. Whereas the military, it is a part of their core curriculum, how to make sure that you're emotionally okay and can continue with the job seamlessly. That's when you're in boot camp, you're taught that, you're retaught that. You have to see certain people throughout your career, mental health, like it is mandatory. It is woven into the fabric of who they are. And I think, yes, they do also have a high rate of burnout, PTSD, suicide, and the like. However, I do think we should look at how they function, because we were never designed, I believe, to see that type of trauma regularly. We are made of love and of light and of happiness. And so to be bombarded with that kind of stimulus on a long time, I feel like it creates damaging maladaptive qualities. And then what happens, we end up turning on and off certain genes. And then when we have our offspring, their template looks different. And so they're born with certain chemical imbalances in their brain because we turn them off. It's almost like the survival of the fittest, right? And evolution continues. We have become now a society that has turned off certain parts of our brain, and it does not make us healthier because we're not processing things appropriately. You can see in the news, people are breaking under this type of pressure, and it is astronomical, the amounts that we are supposed to do. We have also become a society that requires the parents to hold down multiple jobs. So there is no stay-at-home mother anymore. Or father, it's very hard to find those types of qualities. And so what kids are seeing is the constant overwhelming and bombardment of this go, go, go type of society. I think your friend also termed it as the busyness sickness, right? We're just so used to doing that. And again, our children, especially from when they're born to about 4 years old, the template and their emotional IQ and how they view and interact with the world is being developed. And if you're not interacting with them and showing appropriate emotional responses to stimuli, their emotional IQ becomes deadened. And because we're a society of instant gratification, they're not learning how to self-soothe. And so they never learn the appropriate properties in order to deal with trauma or drama or whatever you want to call it, because they're not taught. So I'm almost done, but my children, they're learning about easy breathing and proper breathing techniques. My son and my daughter are two different in terms of how they respond to certain stimulus. My son, I'm guessing it's all the different hormones, but he gets outwardly frustrated when he doesn't, he's not able to complete a task. He's like, ugh, he's outwardly frustrated. So what we're doing, he speaks and I'm like, okay, I understand that you're upset. Let's talk about it. He's only 2. But we need to establish that that's not the appropriate response to when you're frustrated. The appropriate response is to communicate what you need so that I can give that to you if you need it. And so I'll ask him, do you need a hug? No. Do you want a kiss? Yes. And I give him a kiss, and then that thumb goes in his mouth, and he's fine.
Yeah.
My daughter the same way. If she's having a hard time, I'm like, let's talk about it. And I don't want to say there's no need to cry, but you have words now to use so that I can understand where you're coming from. We have to make that normal part of conversation with our littles. So I'm done speaking.
You know what, Tammy? Those are great points, because my youngest son is 21 years old, and he's still outwardly frustrated. And like when he's going through traumatic stuff that he feels is traumatic, because he's 21, right? Then his thing is anger. He's very angry. Like he may punch a wall, and then you got a hole in the wall and your fist bleeding. Dude, what are we doing? I ain't never taught you that. Where would you get this from? So, but if you don't have or don't know how to communicate, don't know how to express within words how you're feeling, that is where we have to start the conversation as young as 2. You know, when they have language, that's when we are supposed to be instilling those things. But a lot of us don't know to do that. We don't know to do that because it wasn't done for us. Right. So right now it's changing that generational curse, so to speak, to where now we are saying, okay, it is okay to not be okay.
Yes.
It's okay to not be okay, because we weren't taught that it was. We was taught you don't cry, so you can be getting a whole whipping. Yeah. And you just let us up. Lady, you just hit me. What I mean, it's hurt. Right. So how are we supposed to be able to express ourselves if we don't know how? And that's where we are in this society, is trying to change those generational curses. So kudos to you, young lady, for saying let's talk about it, because those are things that we didn't get growing up. And so that will make the person, as they get older, have better coping skills as well.
Right.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Dr. Conley.
Yeah, I think also, Tammy, you probably could address this, the science behind the amygdala hijack. And I think that's something that we have to really got to give some thought to. And the amygdala is that little piece of your brain, the reptile brain that we talk about. And that gets triggered. That's the fight, flight, freeze response that we did learn in nursing school. I think I did 1,000 years ago. But we have to recognize that some of that is just that instinctual survival mechanism. Yes. And we go into that, and our body is flooded with cortisol, flooded with adrenaline, flooded with all these sort of pieces. And the other piece I think that's important when you think about that is that you are incapable of your frontal brain connecting. It ain't talking to each other. Yep. You're reacting. And so for me, I have to say that piece of that information was important for me to know, okay, stop, just stop. This this is talking. I have to breathe myself. I did see something the other day about when you're in an amygdala hijack to put your hand in a bucket of ice water. I ain't doing that. That's not happening. No. But I think that awareness, that some of that gal that was driving the car was in an amygdala hijack. Her amygdala was saying, I don't know what to do. I'm going to drive this car really, really fast.
Right.
And I think going back to that pause piece, that reflection piece, that, and I can speak, when I was managing the operating room, we had 17 rooms and it was chaos. Anybody who's ever been in the OR and people running and screaming and carrying on and everybody. And I'd go, deep cleansing breath. And so people, when they walked past the desk, knew that I was going to go, deep cleansing breath. Because that's the one thing that we can do. But unless you're aware of that happening, and again, that was an important piece for me, even with the bullying, to stop and to recognize this isn't about me. This is that going on over there. This is that happening. And there's a lot of other pieces to that. But knowing that my instinct was, I am in danger.
Yes.
And Tammy, you can probably elaborate a little bit more with the brain science of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you're right. Like, there's new science that are coming out that the prefrontal cortex is being delayed in development with this new generation because of the overuse of cell phones and the bombardment of technology. It used to be 25. They're now pushing it to 30. Wow. That they're and that's huge, because that's your decision-making process of your brain. Yeah. If you're not able to utilize that in its full capacity to make appropriate decisions until you're 30, but yet we're out in the workforce and in college at 18, we're graduating, 21, we're having careers. That is a huge gap You know, so understanding that piece is crucial. And I think we need to be educated about these types of things in school. Another thing that I think is appropriate is that we have to be okay with setting healthy boundaries. It's okay to stand up for yourself and not be deemed as rude or too dominant or angry Black woman or whatever other attitude that they want to say about you. One of the things that happened to me in nursing school, growing up, I'm the firstborn, so I've never really been a pushover. I've always been the leader of the pack. As you can probably tell by my personality now, it hasn't really changed much. But I remember being in nursing school, and I've always been very transparent about my feelings. And we had a patient, and they had diabetes. And the way that my nursing school was, like, I followed one preceptor, and I would chart on all my patients. Like, I followed her schedule for 2 weeks until my hours were complete. So it was really nice in that regard. So that was my patient that I was managing. So their blood sugar was low, and I had to give report. And so of course I gave the orange juice and stuff like that. But during report, I was giving it to an older nurse, and I could feel her body language. I'm also an empath, so I could feel when you're having an issue with me. I don't even know why, but we're just talking about this patient. And so I'm going through it, and I'm like, I'm kind of anal, have all my little cheat sheet, and I'm rattling off all this stuff. And I said, oh, I gave them a fluid replacement. Okay. And so she's like, fluid replacement? Well, hold on. You said that they had their blood sugar had dropped. What do you mean you gave them a fluid replacement too? And I said, hold on, let's take a pause, because clearly we're not communicating properly. Let me know what terminology you use. I'm using fluid replacement in the fact that I gave her orange juice because her blood sugar was low. What's the appropriate terminology? Well, you just held her blood sugar. Fluid replacements if you hang a bag up. I said, thank you for letting me know that, but your tone in which you're telling me about the fluid replacement is not appropriate. Well, I mean, I'm just letting you know that you can't be going around using those terms and blah blah. And I'm like, I get what you're saying. However, the way that you're telling me is not appropriate. I don't know. I'm a brand new nurse. I actually haven't even graduated yet. So I need you to tell me, oh, I didn't know that you didn't graduate. I thought you were a new nurse on the floor. I said, okay, I understand. Let's continue the report. But I think this idea that we just want to cut people at the throat all the time without using it as an educational moment. But that's how we were taught in nursing school. It was the display of, let me humiliate you in front of your peers, in front of the doctors, in front of everybody else, put you on the spot constantly. And so what we've done, we've conditioned the nursing students that when their amygdala is frying and that prefrontal cortex jumps out, that we're not giving them the support that they need to make an appropriate decision, because now they're in that fear, flight, and freeze response. And we thrive on that. When they freeze and they stop, we're like, oh, I got them now. But no, that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate, because their prefrontal cortex, the part that you want them to actually learn, is not responding, because all that blood that's supposed to be rushing here is rushing back here to solve a problem. And so we have to solve it then. My other thing is make it mandatory to debrief. I don't care. We don't even get bathroom breaks. We barely even take a lunch, but this has to stop. It needs to be a part of what our daily routine looks like. If it's 5 minutes that we get to go into a spa-like room where there's music, blue light therapy, or whatever you want to do, aromatherapy blowing, we need to have designated rooms that we can go to. The bathroom is no longer appropriate. And I know we've all been to the bathroom and we've had those moments, and just the bathroom is stank too, right? It stinks like urine, feces, and whatever else in that bathroom, but we go in that bathroom to debrief. That's no longer appropriate. We need to, just like how we have laws that say breastfeeding mothers cannot pump milk in the bathroom, when we need to debrief, we should not be debriefing in the bathroom. We need to have a designated spot in the hospital that we can go. Secondly, management needs to have a better open line of communication. If you're an appropriate leader, you should know that when your pack is struggling. When I was charge nurse on the floor, you can feel the pitch of you can feel the pitch. And if you're doing your rounds appropriately, you would be able to identify the ones that just are struggling. Because when you are not right here, again, your prefrontal cortex is not connecting. The blood is not there like it should be. You're not making appropriate calls when you're taking care of your patient. The call light may be going off. Something is off. The way that you're talking, you look a little frazzled. You may be running from room to room. If I'm in a leadership position and I'm doing my rounding and I'm doing everything, it's not just about patient care. It's about your staff care. Because if your staff is not healthy, then how can patient care be healthy?
For sure.
That's right.
I love.
You better preach.
Yeah.
I love it. And that's a great segue into leadership. Because what we do is we put people who are amazing clinicians in leadership positions, and that does not work. I was one of them that they put in a leadership position that didn't need to be a leader at that time because I didn't know leadership. But let me tell you, what happened was I recognized that I didn't need to be a leader because they demoted me. And when they demoted me, I was like, I could have went back and I could have said, well, okay, here we go. They just don't like me, but I didn't. But this is the value of what I'm about to say. I went back and I said, if they demoted you, then something must be wrong with you. You got to figure this out.
Right.
And so once I started figuring it out and I started changing who I was, that's the whole reason why I am a nurse entrepreneur. And I was able to transition, and I'm able to lead my company today in a very different way than what I led at that time, because upper management gives you the okay to say, well, we want to make sure our times are okay. Well, if your staff is not okay, your times are not going to be okay. Your patients are not going to be okay. Nothing is going to be okay. Period, point blank, end of story. And so, Phyllis, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Thank you. This is a panel of some very dynamic women, and so I was working hard on not stepping on top of anybody. I was playing double dutch over here. I was like, let me get in here. Can I get in this rope? So obviously several things have been said, and I'm going to come back to the leadership, and I think they kind of go together with what I'm going to say. It starts with that communication. We got 2 years old, learning how to communicate. I have a 10-month-old grandbaby learning how to communicate. Yesterday, I call her the bus monitor because the kids have gone back to school. And so she's in the car too with the kids going back to school. And yesterday she had a whole meltdown when everybody got out of the car. And there she was. She was like, well, where are they going? Right. And so the time to start teaching communication, even though she's communicative, but it's a 10, almost 11-month-old communication, right? So there's no real formed words, but her ears, her spirit, okay, I'm the kingdom nurse, so y'all know I'm going to bring it around to that. Her spirit is alive and well, and her spirit is not 11 months old.
Right. Right.
Let me say that again. Her spirit is not 11 months old. Her spirit has been with God as long as there's been God, and there's always been God. And so, we love, and I call it Lloyd Kennedy. I love, and whenever she hears that squeak, she knows that's Mama. We do that, but we have to realize that they're littles. I love that. They're littles. They just don't have the stature. They don't have the fat mass and all those things that we have. But that spirit man is not a baby.
Right.
And so beginning to speak to her and helping her understand, hey, what happened? You weren't just left. They're coming back. They went to school. Intellectually, she doesn't understand what school is, but her spirit can begin to understand, I'm not being separated. That helps her to mentally prepare for the ebbs and flows of life. And so her mother was able to talk to her. And then she got on, I almost said Zoom, got on FaceTime with me. And I was like, it's okay, Yorkie. They're coming back. And so she stopped crying for a few minutes. And then after that, she was like, but I need to get this out. So she went on back to the crying and looking out the window. But that communication is key. The communication is also key as we continue to grow and we develop or don't develop or have the lack of development of the ability to have our voice. as a victor, not a survivor of, a victor of a domestic violence life, finding my voice was key. One thing, Dr. Jonelle, is bullies bully people who won't speak up for themselves.
Yeah.
They don't pick on people who gonna give it back to them. Because what you're not gonna do is this. What you're not gonna do that. Or even if you don't look, even if you don't speak, you give them the look like, try it if you want to. You going to sleep, right? Got you.
I wish you would type of mentality.
I wish.
That's it.
But that was something that I learned later after being delivered from that situation. I didn't know it in the beginning. So those things that if we only knew, so it's one more thing to put on parents, right? It is what it is. We've been given this gift. We've been given this gift to steward. We've been given this gift to cherish. And when we don't set them up for success early in their lives, then when life starts lifing, I think that's a word you use, Dr. V. When life starts lifing, then now they're ill prepared.
Yeah.
Baby was like unhappy with the fact that all of us, and she's been left from them before. I mean, they're 11 and almost 16. There's 3 of them ahead of her. That's a whole nother story. You know how we getting up with this baby and these other big kids. That's a whole nother story. But they're accustomed to her doing what she's accustomed to seeing them doing their thing. But for whatever reason, that didn't feel good to her. Helping to start to develop their ability to communicate and their own self-esteem.
Right.
Yeah, they going on to do that. Guess what I'm getting ready to do? I'm getting ready to crawl around in the house. I'm getting ready to go in their room and mess with their stuff. You know, whatever it is that she's gonna do, helping her to understand it's gonna be okay. That was for mama to say, girl, me and you finna hang out. We gonna do this, we gonna do that. Building up that confidence that allows them or precludes them not to end up being the abused woman. Not to be the staff member who's bullied. Because, Nurse Ratchet is at every hospital. She was there. She ate on her, just like guppies. I've talked to Dr. V about this in the guppies. Right. Mama guppies will eat their own self babies as they're delivering them.
Right.
They will. They will eat their own guppy babies as they're delivering them. Nurses do the same thing. That same nurse that you're going to have to depend on in a code situation or in a something else that's going on emergently, that you need to make sure she knows her stuff. So when it's you and her in an emergency, she's going to help you. We eat them up. We tear them down. We diminish their self-esteem. What is that? I believe that those people had something missing early on in their development as human beings. This is how we speak to people. This is how we don't speak to people. It is a job. It's a whole job. It's more than keeping the baby. I'm also a labor and delivery nurse. It's more than just keeping one end wet and one end dry. We have a whole lot of responsibility when it comes to our children. And I had to get a whole bunch in because y'all didn't let me talk. Because they can let me talk. Dr. V, help me.
It's not just the nurses. It's not just the nurses that does it to each other. It's the doctors that does it to the nurses. It's like comes from the top down. What is that about? The reason why you have to have this God complex about you, so much arrogance to where you feel like you're better than. And I told my son, you got to validate your kids too. You got to validate. And I know
that's
I told
a part
my
of that
son,
growing up. Yes.
It is. And I told my son, you're never better than anybody else, but you're just as good, son. You're just as good. And everybody has their own different qualities and their own different strengths and weaknesses. And just because you can do something better than in this arena, better than another person can do, does not make you better, son. It doesn't make you better. And then, but people are get some titles and have 2 nickels to rub together. And then they start treating people like they less than. Well, you can't treat God's people that way because he doesn't have a respect for person. And so you shouldn't either. So you can't treat a person that's going through some things and struggling, whether it's mental or emotional or even financial, less than because you done made it. because if all of us don't make it, ain't none of us making it.
But I think that it's important for us to understand that, you know, and it's good that we're talking about the children, but but these are adults at this point, right? And what we want to talk about is kind of how to transform it once they get to be adults, right? And what we do at this point in order to transition them, because that whole thing about physicians treating nurses like they're less than, or the nurses treating other nurses like they're less than. You know, that's I believe that's a CEO problem. Okay.
It's also, I'm sorry, Dr. B.
No, go ahead.
I think also that you're right. It starts as the children, but then it goes, those people who don't have those skills then transition into adults who don't know how to treat other people. Part of the problem is we don't have good conflict management. And depending upon, or we have no conflict management. It's because I said so. We're reared that way. And so then we take those things that we were taught as children and adults into the workplace. I want to add to you, Anissa, when you talked about the doctors mistreating the nurses. If we're really honest, they mistreat each other. Residents they have a hard life. And then they turn into, and I don't know if you've ever worked in a teaching environment where you see, it's an eye-opening. It's eye-opening to watch medical education. I call them not the attending, I call them the offending.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Because that's what it is. And I am convinced that medical school is nothing but survival of the fittest. It has nothing to do with how smart. You know, we thought, little Johnny is super smart. He could be a doctor. Can he persevere? That's the thing, because we have resources to help people figure out what the diagnosis is. Can they put up with all the personalities and all the things
the hazing? Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. It's hazing, and so is the nurses eating their young. It is hazing.
Yes.
And the thing about it too, when it comes to physicians, I think that one of the things we talk about what we say, right? So not just what we say to other people, but what we say to ourselves. We have to speak life into ourselves before we get out the bed. And, as we're getting out of the bed in the morning, we have to speak life into ourselves. A lot of people, I say every now and then that I'm fat. I ain't gonna let nobody else tell me I'm fat. Okay. Right. But then I'll say that I'm fat. Right. To stop saying that to yourself. Say I am, on my way to just a skinny person on the inside of me. Okay. And so when you do that, then you don't allow other people to come to you and say those things. There was a physician who came to me one time, and he wanted to get this pregnant girl, she's a young girl, give her a pregnancy category D drug. And so I looked it up. It wasn't a drug that like she needed. And so I looked it up. I had a Precept T with me at the time. And I said, watch this. So we go tell him that we don't feel comfortable giving it. I said, we ain't giving it. Let's be clear. Okay. I said, but just watch me say that. I said, because I don't want to ruffle his feathers. And so he came back and I said, I don't feel comfortable giving what she needs it. No, she does not. The benefits do not outweigh the risk. I looked it up. Cletus. Okay. And so then she went on and he kept saying, he kept going at it. I said, I'm not giving it. Done. Okay. Now, if he'd have went to someone else and they'd have asked, well, why ain't Viola giving it? And so then he would have had to explain. So he just scratched it off the list and he kept it moving. Okay. Because it was not. But we as nurses, we are the conduit between the physicians and the patients. And if you do not take care of your nurses, I can promise you your patients won't be taken care of. Period, point blank in the story. Dr. Jo Neal.
Yeah. Just yesterday, I had a meeting with 3 nurse leaders about a unit that has bullying going on. And so there's 2 components. There's an organizational component and there's a personal component. The organization must have a code of conduct that is enforceable and the courage to enforce it across the board. Part 1. And leaders, Tammy, I think you mentioned this. They don't teach us how to be leaders in nursing school. So unless you assume that job and say, boy, I don't have what I need, I'm going to find it out. I'm going to either college or courses or whatever it takes. But the organization, and I can tell you about the CEO that I got fired based on the code of conduct of the organization, but you need to document. So the personal piece, you need to document. And here's the key about documentation. I want to make sure everybody hears this. When you document, you tell the facts.
Yes.
Not your emotional interpretation of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you write it out. And I have a tool, we can make sure everyone gets that tool. But what happened in the facts? What, not emotional. She said this, he did that. Dr. So-and-so told, blah, 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 the whole thing. Time, place, who saw it. Then here's the key, and I want to make sure everybody gets this. What was the impact on my ability to deliver patient care?
Right.
What was my ability? Was I distraught? Was I distracted? Did I have to run places looking for a piece of equipment that she hid in the bathroom so I couldn't find it? Right. What was all of that? What was the impact on the organization? Did this incur 3 hours of overtime because we couldn't do what we had to do because this bullying was going on? Then what was the impact on me? I was distraught. I had diarrhea. I called in sick because I didn't want to work with that witch. All of the above. And that's how you do. You don't just jump to, oh my God, she was so awful to me, Susie. I can't stand with working with her. You don't start there. Start with the impact on the patient. So the organization needs a code of conduct that is enforced, courage, and then the individual needs the strength. Just like you were saying, I ain't going to give that medicine. I'm not doing that. You have to have your personal resolve. And lastly, I also want to just touch bases that there's a spectrum of behavior. There are people that are rude. They're not intentionally getting up in the morning going, I'm going to get you, Anissa. They're not doing that. Yeah. There's bullies who say, I'm getting up in the morning and I'm getting Anissa today. That's all there's to it. I'm tired of working with her. Or then there's the narcissist who is incapable of being aware of anybody else's needs but themselves. And then on the other side, there are people that really don't matter. And if they're rude and they don't matter, don't give your spirit away to them. Don't give any piece of them. Don't allow them to take that piece. There's people who matter a little bit, and there's strategies for dealing with people that work a little bit. And then there's people that really matter. Those folks that are in our inner circle, our loved ones, people, all of that. So every situation isn't exactly the same. So again, I think going back last thing, organizational, individual.
I love it.
You know what I call that, Dr. Jonelle? I call that, where do they sit? Which row do they sit on in the church called your life?
There you go.
Are they a front pew person? Or are they back yonder?
I'm writing that down. I'm writing that down.
Yeah. What pew are they on? Are they in the overflow because they, that's just how, because they couldn't get there in time? So those people on the front pew, they purpose to get there early. They bring value. Mm-hmm. They're the people, the amen corner. They're the folks that's helping propel the service forward, right? And the folk in the back is on their phone or doing whatever. You have to determine. I think that was good. What do people bring to you as a life? But again, that's part of that esteem that we need to begin early. Yes. And the truth is, as preceptors, and we all have precepted. Mm-hmm. We need to start instilling that stuff and teaching our baby nurses. Is the reason why they're called baby nurses, because we're responsible for teaching them. Now you're gonna be out here some pariahs and piranhas and pariahs, two different types of personalities in these waters. This is what you need to do. Don't be out there thrashing. I just came from Myrtle Beach, y'all, and yeah, right. I did a survey in Myrtle Beach, and I was looking out my window, looking at that water. I was like, "There's some sharks in that water. I ain't going out there in that. I ain't going in that water." Yeah. But there is a way to not be shark bait. If you out there in the water splashing around and cutting up, and they looking for you because they think you're a school of fish.
Now, I think
how do you carry yourself so you don't look like a victim? Okay,
but I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Absolutely.
And so some of the students that are coming out, they are exhibiting signs of extreme arrogance and overconfidence.
That needs to be fixed too.
That's a real problem. But I think what we all need to is become self-aware and realize that a person, I like what you said, Dr. Joel, like their external experience and how it affects us should not dictate how I affect others. Because a lot of people are giving too much authority to others over their body and how they feel and how they interact with their environment. I tell people, and I tell my patients all the time, I am not everybody's cup of tea, and that is fine. I am fine with that. The thing is when you come to visit me and you have a conversation with me, if you can't be 110% transparent with me about what you're feeling and how you're coping on with life, then me and you as a provider-patient relation, it's just not going to work. And that's how I look at everything in my life. I no longer feel like I have to have certain people in my life if it's not beneficial to me. And so, like, the HCAP survey, right? I don't know if you guys were always told that a patient who's an 8 out of 10 is easy to get to a 10 out of 10. Versus a patient that's a 1 out of 10, you ain't going to get that patient to give you a 10 out of 10. It's not to say, it's almost the same trauma narrative, like Black and stuff like that. It's not to say that you're not going to give that patient, great care. It's just understanding that 1 is not going to get you to a 10. You can still provide them the same effective patient care that you give the 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and you'll get that 10. But that 1 is just not going to change. And that's okay. Now, it not has to do anything with you and the person that you are or the influence that you have. If we can separate the two, that when you're going, we are in a profession that we see people on some of the worst days of their life.
For sure.
If you think about how you're processing information on the worst day of your life, it's not going to be all the time appropriate. They're not going to be all bubbles and happy and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that we deserve all this type of treatment, but what I'm saying is that we have to set respectful boundaries. Now, where I also think that needs to happen is that we need to make it that we're not a punching bag for nobody. Okay. So if you go ahead and in your right faculties, assault me, spit on me, try to hit me, kick me, or whatever, I will be pressing charges. I don't care what the hospital says, how sick you are, you still have basic human rights that you were told not to touch or offend or hurt somebody. And I think we need to also make that okay, because the patients are abusing us. And we have been like, oh, well, that's okay. No, it's not. If someone attacks your physical body and us just to complacently say that that's okay, it sets the precedence for how the hospital system runs. That, okay, well, this patient hit you outside your head. You didn't report it. You're fine. You still shake it off, go back to work. Now your staff member, your colleague is hitting you outside your head or calling you or belittling you or whatever. And another thing that I want to say is the brain is so amazing where the responses are the same, both physically and emotionally. The same cortisol levels are released. So your body responds physiologically the same way as a social experience or an emotional encounter or a physical attack. So if we can just put that out there, whether you hit me or verbally assault me, my body responds the same way. And the damage continues the same way. The way that I'm processing and my high blood pressure and the cortisol levels and now my high blood sugar and all this other stuff that we tend to pile up on top of it. So making that a normal part of conversation that nobody should be allowed to abuse you, whether it is the doctor, whether it is the patient, whether the patient family, whether this, and nobody in the healthcare system should be able to abuse you, and making that normal. And I think another thing why doctors have gotten into this way of thinking, and they're now starting to change because now they're starting to offer more holistic approaches and more bedside manner and training and trying not to overuse the residents, but that's a form of torture. No one should be working 24, 36 hours, sleeping in the hospital for 2 hours, and then getting and doing patient care. Why did we normalize this? This is not appropriate. Yeah, we're in a physician shortage, but is that appropriate management of people?
And a nursing shortage too, but we don't do that.
That's what I'm saying. It's just chronic stress. I don't understand why that is seen as an okay tool to use. The other thing I feel like is the issue is that back in the day, women were mostly nurses, and men were mostly doctors, and so this dichotomy of how to treat a woman existed, and we're passive, and we have to get up and give the chair to the doctor when he walks into the room. All this type of foolishness that was instilled in us as very young, and unfortunately has perpetuated on forward. Now, I am very vocal. I will always stand up for myself, and I will always approach you in a respectful way. And if you're disrespecting me, I will also let you know that, hey, I don't appreciate that tone, or can we talk about this later when conversations or when our emotions are now leveled out. I think that needs to be normal part of conversation, because the way that it's going on right here, and that's one of the reasons I refuse to work in a hospital ever again, is because I'm gonna say it, it's a piss peeing contest. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The culture that has been created in that environment is ridiculous, and it needs to stop, because nurses like the one that just killed 6 people, no one saw the warning signs the whole time that she was on that shift. And I can't believe her patients were taken care of appropriately and no one was complaining and medications were passed out and she wasn't frazzled at work on her job, and management didn't come and intercede then. And 13 counts prior to that, come on, you were not behaving appropriately at work for a very long time, and people allowed you to function in that capacity because you were short staffed and because you were agency nurse or whatever, and so people just think that you should just take it. So
Unfortunately, she didn't have the support. I don't think that she could have had the support she needed in the workplace or even afterward if she was arguing with her boyfriend. But you have to have an environment to where you feel safe, and we don't anymore. And whether it's in the hospital or it's in our personal lives, we have to have, that's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if those needs are not being met in any way, shape, form, or fashion, then it is exhibited in a negative way. And a lot of people do not understand that. And whether it's, again, in healthcare or in your personal life, you have to have safety. You have to have stability, and like you were saying, the communication. And for me, it's 3 things, like I told my husband, it's 3 things that we will always keep in our marriage. Christ, number 1, communication, and commitment. So if we can't communicate, at least we're gonna be committed, and we're gonna go to communicate with God about each other in our prayer closet or whatever.
We gonna Christ it up.
Christ it out. But if you have any of those 3 things, whether it's in your marriage or in your any form of relationship, whatever ship you're in, you have to have those 3 things. Are you committed to being a good person? Are you committed to being a good friend? Are you committed to communicating yourself and appropriately, so that you're not necessarily offending anybody? Get your point across. But just because you're getting your point across doesn't mean that you have to be rude and condescending and putting people down in that way. Now, Tammy, you're a better woman than me, baby, because I got 27 voices. I be trying to calm down to keep me from going to jail. So I'm learning to respond as opposed to react to a lot of things. And we weren't taught how to respond. We was taught how to react.
Yes.
And so getting to that form as we grow up, as we are adults, learning that, surrounding ourselves with people that can help us draw that piece out is what's important, because we're not doing that. And it has to be done. Otherwise, this society is not going to be one that will be conducive to life as we keep moving forward.
I love that. And I love the ships, like the relationships. The deal is that, when this young lady, when she blew through that stoplight, one of her friends came out and said that, told all her business, right? And so people were upset with the friend because the friend didn't pull her away from that situation. Like they were upset about that. But what I was more upset about is the fact that she blasted her business all over the news. This is the deal. This is the reason why you have to make sure that you have no squares in your circle, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are taking care of your people. If we get friends, I'm not going to the news outlet and tell the news outlet nothing about you. Nothing.
I don't know. That's my.
I don't. Well, I tell them I know, but I ain't telling you. Okay. Because at the end of the day, you have to understand that at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're surrounded. I say these all the time. You're the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that you're hanging around with people who are amazing. Yeah. So we have about 6 more minutes. And this has been a very robust conversation. You guys are absolutely amazing. But I want to end with your number 1 closing remarks. I want you to tell everyone how they can find you, what your business does, and all of that. And then we will end. So I'm gonna start at the bottom of the screen with Phyllis.
Thank you. Guys, this has been amazing, amazing, amazing conversation. And hopefully it's not the last time that we will start to switch the paradigm. It's not just sociology. Well, it is sociology. It's not just things about the anatomical body that we need to teach. We need to teach people how to be prepared to survive in this environment and what that means. And we begin to teach our children that from young. I am Phyllis Carter Riles. I'm the owner of Phyllis C. Riles LLC, where I take my CIC, my Certified Infection Control certification, and I take it to the marketplace. I take it to the kingdom through infection control concepts, collaborative infection control concepts for churches. I am also the virtual mentor. I mentor and encourage, and I, most importantly, bridge the gap between healthcare and kingdom care. You can find me at phylliscrilesconsulting.com, Phyllis at phylliscrilesconsulting.com. I also am the author. Thank you, Dr. V. I am the author of Clean Paws, Our Safe Paws, a book, a trilogy of books, actually, coloring book and activity book that is geared to help young people, littles, 10 and under, learn the valuable skill of hand washing and proper hand washing.
I love it. Tammy?
So what I want to leave everybody with is we have to remember to breathe. We take breathing for granted. It's one of the first things that we do when we come earthside. We're so focused on you breathing. The baby also doesn't know how to regulate their breath for a long time until we forget, and it becomes an automatic process for us. But the way that we breathe in and we breathe out resets our brain and stimulates our vagus nerve to decrease our cortisol levels and get some of the process back into our frontal lobes so that we can make healthy decisions. And so I challenge everyone to just breathe. Take a stop. Whenever something affects you, look at yoga. It's called a Ujjayi breath. If you can master that Ujjayi breath, whether you're in physical stress or emotional stress, your body will respond the same way. And because I've been practicing for a long time, I may feel like I'm okay in processing things, but all of a sudden I'll start my Ujjayi breathing and I'm like, I was stressed, but my body, the chemicals that were being released were showing otherwise. And my body started to take over with that Ujjayi breath. So my name is Tamanika Marshall. I'm a family nurse practitioner. You can find me at www.laluerhw.com, which is LALUEURHW.com. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. And just breathe.
The name of your business like it's supposed to be said, ma'am.
Okay. So my business name is La Lech. Health and wellness. So I don't say that anymore.
Yes, you do.
But it is La Lech. Health and wellness.
I love it. Dr. Conley.
Oh, I love all of you. I'm in love. I'm in love with all of you. I help individuals and organizations resist and recover from toxic workplaces caused by bullying. And bullying is not natural. It's not about you. It needs to be addressed. Miss Phyllis, I'm going to take the church pew about not everybody deserves all of your time and attention and energy. Yeah. And again, I'm Dr. Joniel Conley. I can be found at drjoniel.com on Facebook and TikTok. That's my other favorite place to be. And I'm happy to reach out and help anybody, organizations or individuals.
I love it. Onissa.
Well, my name is Onissa Mitchell Fisher. I'm the introvert of the group, as you can tell, right?
Not at all. Not at all. Don't believe that.
I am the owner and CEO of Healing Heart CPR and the new owner of Onyx Oasis Services that's about to be launched here shortly. So I don't have all the plugs in yet for the website, but I'm also an author. I have 2 books out. One of them is called Chosen. Chosen is about finding purpose in your life from nursing, and then I have another one that's a devotional. It's called Chosen to Heal, because that's what God did for me. He chose me to heal mind, body, and soul, and I incorporate that into my practice because I like to, yes, you're sick. Yes, you have illnesses, but what else is going on that's causing those illness? I like to look at your mind, your body, your soul, and heal the whole person. But I can be found at Chosen FNP on Facebook and www.chosenfnp.com. If you want to order any books or you need to get in contact with me, you can get in contact with me through those ways. So thank you, ladies. Y'all have sown into my life, and y'all have to remember that take good care of yourself. Do something to be better than you were yesterday. And don't compare yourself to the person next to you, because the only one that you're in competition with is you. So make sure you do something every day to be 1% better than you were yesterday. So Christ, commitment, and communication in all of your ships will help you along the way.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So my name is Dr. Viola Pierce. I'm the owner and CEO of VP Nursing and the Nurse Nurturer, where our goal is to teach nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, make money, and own in their own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. So we have a master class that's coming to September 6, 2022. It's going to be from 6 until 8 p.m. So I encourage you to go over to my website, vpnursing.com, and sign up for the master class. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And what I leave you with is to surround yourself with amazing women like I have on this panel today, because when you do, you won't let people bully you. Your mental health is so much better because they pour into you. And so I'm so super excited to have you guys as friends, and you, everyone out there in social media world, y'all have a good rest of your day.